Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the DXM podcast. I am Colborn and I'm joined today with the artist DaYouM. Pleasure.
Likewise, it's great to be here, and I'm here through a collusion of circumstances with a very sleepy baby boy, my youngest child, my son Brave.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Who does sort of have a bit of a crypto tie-in in his own odd little way. But yeah, no, it's great to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to chatting and being able to share a bit more of myself and my work and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you both for being here today. It's really lovely. We're going to start where we always start, and that is just giving you the space to share anything about yourself, your practice, and how you might have discovered crypto art.
Yeah, definitely. So, my artistic roots go back kind of, I don't know, I guess arbitrarily long, depending on how far we want to go back. As a child, I was sort of very sort of creatively and artistically oriented. I was enrolled usually in one or more sort of visual art type extracurricular classes, very often through sort of, I guess, my art teacher at the time, who I think at one time was actually my at school art teacher, but even after I moved schools, my parents signed me up sort of on an ongoing basis to his various after school classes, and eventually he actually founded a school with creative arts specialization that is still going strong in my hometown to this day. Now, back then, I think probably honestly mostly because when and where I was, sort of computers weren't a big thing yet. I didn't have really that early childhood connection to technology, but after the move to Canada from Hungary, where I grew up, I was 12 when we moved to Canada, and that was a big change for me. It was kind of a difficult time, kind of a rough time. For children, I guess, immigration or, sort of these large moves can sometimes be easier because they can have an easier time to adjust. I think 12 years old is probably sort of that worst possible point to pick where, you're on that verge of sort of all sorts of changes and, changing social dynamics and whatnot. And it didn't work great for me. I wasn't, all that happy with the changed circumstances for the first couple of years, and probably, not unlike a lot of us with sort of computer focus early on. It's that difficulty with sort of the social scene that I think allowed me to delve as deeply into technology as I did, as early as I did. I think still somewhere on the internet floats around an early tutorial I wrote, I think maybe at the age of maybe 14 or 15, on how to create assembly language based functions that can be called from C and C++ files when compiled with the Borland C++ compiler. Right. So, took a while for the technological interest to circle back to art, but it was actually with the birth of my my now 15-year-old daughter in 2007 that I sort of started having my sort of hobby computing time be increasingly art focused, starting initially with fractals. I think I've told this story a few times, so I won't get too deeply into it, but most people back then, and I suspect even now, generate fractals with sort of ready-made programs where you basically press a couple of buttons and slide some sliders and pick a few colors and out comes something amazing that you have no idea how it was made or what the math is behind it. They were lovely, but that held no interest for me because I didn't feel connected to the work. So I basically started writing stuff from scratch on my own, starting very simple. Starting very simple, but eventually finding sort of different and unconventional ways of exploring the boundaries of mathematical sort of art and fractal art, coming up with some things that I think others haven't found up until I did. And it was around 2015 that I started having the confidence in myself and in my work to start seeking exhibition opportunities. At that point, it wasn't through Cryptoart yet. That came a bit later in 2019. And my application to Known Origin and Super Rare coincided with my first international exhibition. I was part of a group exhibition in Truro, Cornwall, United Kingdom, in the Royal Cornwall Museum. And I think that was enough, and that sounded prestigious enough to not have too much trouble in either of those platforms. Which in hindsight feels remarkable, given that Super Rare makes a bit of a sport of rejecting artists left, right, and center. Yeah. But I minted my first pieces on both of those platforms in December of 2019, and that got me my small start. Things progressed from there with some hiccups and whatnot, given the impending end of the world that we somehow managed to survive.
Yeah, gosh, it brings me right back to when I first encountered your work, right? Not only was there just like this incredible intricacy and like depth and intention and intelligence behind every single piece of it, but there was also like a remarkable humor to it as well. I think of like I'm brought immediately back to $1 Trillion Mandala. It's just wonderful. There is a wonderful, joyous playfulness that you go about in like this mathematical interrogation of nature, of the universe. Spirituality, intention, all of these things. It speaks to an incredible and complicated person and probably life. So maybe you want to talk more about these pieces and what you think you're exploring in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mean in a general sense, the sort of earlier pieces?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when I initially started with the early pieces are for the most part they're textured pickover biomorphs, which is just a whole bunch of gibberish to most people. But basically, the pickover biomorphs they're sort of an algorithm pretty closely related to the Mandelbrot set and the Julia sets, which we tend to be more familiar with. And you could almost say that biomorphs are sort of a different way of visualizing sort of the same equations, and they were discovered by Dr. Clifford Pickover, who is a pretty prolific scientist and writer, and he's got lots of interesting and odd and often quirky sort of discoveries and things tied to his name. But with this thing, the sort of incredible thing is how lifelike, in the sense of like microbial, creature-like shapes these algorithms produce. And the funny thing is, it's mathematical art. It's not sort of that more contrived sort of algorithmic art where you think of an outcome as the artist, and you sort of figure out step by step how to produce it through different equations and algorithms. Rather, it's funnily enough, the algorithm essentially probes sort of point by point, pixel by pixel, and makes a decision. Is this pixel gonna be color A or color B or color C? And the simplest ones just have two colors. I have some very early pieces which are sort of just black and white, but there's a way to sort of further differentiate the outcomes of the equations, and that gives you the ability to use more color. And the sort of textural aspect was something that I had been experimenting with, I don't think for very long, by the time that I started minting. And it was, I believe, through minting that I first sort of really put those out there with I guess a confidence and an expectation that they'll stand on their own, and they'll be able to be sort of as you said, sometimes humorous, but in a sense serious, sort of respectable pieces of art. I think Baby Boy here is probably largely amused by all the English talking and gesticulation. Right. He mostly gets Hungarian from me. So.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be able to sleep.
Yeah, I'm not getting the impression that it's gonna be going in that direction.
Friday night.
Yeah. So the textured piece is essentially forgo color, and interestingly enough, what they do. Gyere babám, dőljél le. Próbáljunk megledülni egy picit. Okay. What they do is they sort of twist and warp and distort images, and most of the ones that are the early pieces that you would be familiar with, they are using a few different images. And I guess what makes a lot of the textural pieces special, because there is every possibility for them to also come out, kind of dull and uninteresting, because the textures can sort of shrink to the point where, the entire picture just really becomes like a single color, or, it can be so large that, like the whole thing is just pixelated, and at both of those extremes, you're not really getting, the substance of the image. But, done right, what you get instead is basically a biomorph that is recognizable as a biomorph, that still has that, often sort of microbial or amoeba-like organic quality, even though it sort of has no business having that appearance or that look. And, it's not even like, some algorithmic stuff out there where, the algorithm that makes a shape like you see on some sea creatures, the reason that works is because, those sea creatures actually use some weird biological equivalent of that. Nothing like that is going on here. This stuff is based in, complex mathematics, and again, it's weirdly well suited to computing and to sort of kind of a pixel-based rasterized processing, and absolutely removed from anything organic or biological or anything of this world, really. That's the crazy stuff. But with the textures, that gives an opportunity to sort of bring something of this world back into it, beyond the strange organic feeling of the piece. And some of the pieces are about cosmic wonder. I'm sure when I say those words, you can probably think of a couple of them that very much exude that sense.
Those words very much bring me right back to the piece of it's one of those click to transmute pieces, right? Which is a whole other aspect of like your technical mastery, but it brings me right back to that tree, and then the tree under the night sky. And always was a huge fan of this. It seems like you had a phase as well where you just wanted to go and kind of like push the limits and hack everything. It also, it reminds me of the work you did on async, which I think had millions of potential combinations.
I think into some crazy number that I think we'd have to look up what to pronounce it as.
Right.
I forget what it was, but it was like you might not have enough seconds in the lifetime of the universe to be able to view them all, type of thing. You'll definitely see more biomorphs from me. I think there's still very much a sort of fragile promise and opportunity in those click to transmute type pieces. What I hate about those is how dependent they are in sort of the presentation context, because the moment that that changes, or God forbid super rare one day changes how they present stuff, that'll sort of break those. But those were really fun to make too. I basically sort of had to come up with a program that uses essentially sort of tricks of transparency and sort of the alpha values inheriting, I guess, their color from the background when displayed, to essentially stuff two images into a single picture, and do so in a way where given a light background or a white background, you only saw the first one, but given a dark or black background, you only see the second one. And
those instances of works that really shocked me are few and far between, and I remember that one. Very, very fondly.
And yeah, for sure, the tree and the night sky, like that's incredible. And it's one of those things where funny you should say that it shocked you. It shocked me because I don't fully recall off the top of my head. I mean, obviously one of the images was the tree, but I don't 100% recall what exactly the second image looked like. But I can tell you, I was not expecting that sort of, from that, I was not expecting the cosmic wonder to show up with the sort of strength and dominance that it did in the dark version.
Yeah.
And with that one too, like some of those type of pictures are kind of very, very binary, right? You have the white background and you see one thing, and you have the dark background and you see maybe something completely different that might have some relation, but in a sense, it's almost like it's really something you could achieve with two different images kind of being flipped with JavaScript. But the amazing thing is that that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
But with that one, with the tree, it was basically done in a way where I didn't, because of the sort of pictures that were used, I didn't have the ability to sort of fully restrict one image to the light background and one image to the dark background. So the dark background version with the starry sky essentially became what it is, partly due to sort of bits and pieces of the first image still seeping in.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be impossible for anybody to understand that is listening to this. You just go look at the work. I think it's on Super Rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go check out the body of work, because it's incredible. I'd love for you to, if you're open to it, share about your initial experiences with Art Blocks, being one of the first people there. It was an obviously natural fit, the series you created.
Yeah, so it's funny the way that came about. It was actually my friend Fabien Rashid, who I think you well know, and Fabien is an incredible and innovative and pioneering and groundbreaking artist, Cryptoartist in the space. That honestly, if anyone listening doesn't know, better do a search now and get yourself up to speed.
Yeah,
again and again, right?
That guy.
Yeah,
mind-blowing stuff.
So he's had a number of series that push the envelope in big ways, and more than a few of them in ways that sort of, I would say, haven't been matched since he's done it. So he demonstrated what could be done, but the rest of crypto art is still sort of yet to fully catch up to fully being able to realize those possibilities in a more broad way. But it was Fabien that actually introduced me to Eric, and that was, I think it was during the summer of 2020, maybe late summer, probably early fall at most. And even though it was, I guess, so close to in hindsight what would be the launch of Art Blocks, at that stage my conversations with Eric were I would say deceptive, because he was just this incredibly humble, clearly very intelligent, and sort of broadly technologically capable guy, but very humble, and talked sort of very tentatively about the whole project, and there was stuff on the test net, and basically the introduction from Fabien led to me sort of providing an older existing project of mine to sort of implement on the test net as something, I guess, a bit more I'm trying to think of the word here. I mean, it was basically, not something written specifically for the, engine, but rather something that was sort of written to be what it is, and then had to be adapted. And I think from what I recall from our conversations, I got the impression that, that was partly what Eric was looking for at the time, to be able to sort of come across what some of the real world challenges might be once, he started getting, a series and projects from other artists who didn't necessarily have any. Hey, Cash. Now the funny thing is, he's definitely not hearing the cats.
That's it. Yeah.
And yet the sounds are so similar.
We're dealing with it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one project, which funnily enough was also biomorphs.
Yep.
That was implemented by Eric on sort of the early Art Blocks test net, we I guess minted a few, and sort of I found it interesting, but I didn't fully grasp the significance and the full potential at the time, and again how sort of humble and self-deprecating Eric was, didn't help that part, because basically I think in our last conversation, Eric's explanation was was something like, so yeah, I'm gonna keep working on it, and maybe sometime eventually down the road, a year from now or more, who knows, there'll be something of it, or maybe nothing will ever come of this, and this testnet thing will be all there is. And in contrast with that, a couple of months later, of course, Art Blocks bursts onto the scene in like as big a way as anything.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I wasn't getting before and that I wasn't understanding before, started coming across, very, very clear at that point. And basically, I got back on Discord and started chatting with Eric, and CryptoBlots. They are sort of a you could say a version 2, or like a reworking of a much earlier algorithm of mine, which isn't as mathematical as a lot of my early works tend to be. The original version was it was basically a random walk generator that sort of randomly filled in bounded areas of the image, and that one was monochrome. So it was just it wasn't black and white, but it was just shades of gray, which oddly enough, in some sense, maybe offered sort of easier approach to the idea of periodolic images of stuff that you see in there than the colored stuff. But between monochrome and the color stuff, what you saw was also pretty different, right? The monochrome stuff was sometimes more complex, but also it was, in a sense, I would almost say it was more rare that you saw something truly interesting or kind of striking or engaging. Whereas with the color stuff, there are certainly a lot more, bugs and, sort of alien looking things and whatnot, but those are interesting, those are striking. And after a few conversations and a couple of weeks, we were able to get CryptoBlocks to a point where we both felt happy sort of getting it out there. And I was very fortunate, and my unending gratitude to Eric. I was fortunate to be the first post Art Blocks launch Art Block Curated Artist, along with Pixel Queen or Pixel Q, who is now on the Art Blocks staff. Her own series launched the same day, and that was a big step forward for me as well. The sort of both I guess the I don't know if I should call it fame, the I don't know, the prestige of it, as well as the financial part, those together sort of pushed me onto yet a higher level than where I had there until been operating, and allowed a greater degree of freedom to sort of explore different areas and different directions going forward from there.
I would be remiss if I didn't speak to two more things, and I believe they're interrelated. One would be, you have a very well-defined philosophy around crypto art, what it means to be a crypto artist. And I think it's very much reflected in the work that you've collected, how you've shared this idea of community, how you've opened up and helped lift up so many others. The work you've done there beyond being just an artist is incredibly admirable. And I hear it just again and again and again, how people look to you just like as a mentor, as an advisor, as somebody who is so supportive and like well-intentioned. And I'd love to just hear from you what it means to be a crypto artist, and how, it's this attitude has like reflected in the ways that you give back.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that and bringing that up. For me, being a crypto artist is, it's become in a sense, perhaps one of the most defining aspects of my life. And I know that, I'm certainly not alone with that. Obviously, the crypto art scene has been sort of a life-changing experience for many of us, especially many of us who were early on in the scene. But I came into all this in 2019, and I did so with some hesitation, with some trepidation. I had been seeing everything going on for so long that I got to a point where I started feeling silly for not being a part of this thing that clearly was happening and was engaging artists and was getting them exposure and was giving them opportunities to convey their visions of the world to an audience that was there and was eager for art, and interested in the artists, and all of that attracted me, and that's what got me to sort of initially start. But as a pre-crypto art artist, I had definitely struggled with sort of the idea of a lack of legitimacy to my art, because it's digital art, because it's mathematical art, because it's printed on a printer, or sometimes printed by a print shop, and handled by someone altogether different. And the physical art, in some people's eyes, maybe has more ties to a completely different person than myself, even though I'm, purporting to be the artist. And, so some of that was kind of internal, kind of paranoia and self-doubt. Some of it, honestly, I've, not rudely, but literally been kind of confronted by comments, here and there. So, it wasn't even all in my head, I can tell you that. And yet still, bizarrely enough, I guess maybe having, internalized this sense of prejudice against digital art to such an extent, I came into crypto art for the first 3-4 months at least, maybe a little bit more, always having this worry in the back of my mind, am I making a mistake by taking this particular work that, I could try to, whether now or down the road, sort of present as a more traditional physical work, even if it's, originally digital, and, now I can't because now it's, minted as crypto art, and, I've made that commitment. And, and that started to disappear. And that started to disappear kind of mid to late in 2020. The pandemic was not kind to me. As you know, I have kind of a complicated situation in terms of family stuff. My wife is an American citizen and still on that side of the border. Back then, my fiance, and I have children from my previous marriage who are on this side of the border, kind of back and forth between me and their mom. And so 2020 came, and I was actually in the States when it started to get really bad. And I was in the States in March when they essentially, I'm rolling my eyes, pretended to shut down the border. Honestly, it's my understanding is that the sort of border by air never really closed, even though it wasn't sort of spoken of and advertised loudly that you could still basically fly if you wanted and if you have the money. But certainly the land border that I had been using and that I was dependent on, and which was affordable to me for traveling back and forth, and at that stage, my regular routine was basically going back and forth every like 2 weeks, basically, to keep it simple. And so there I was in the States. The borders were, by all appearances, closing with, all sorts of promises that this is going to be super temporary, and, it's just a month, and, maybe they'll renew it, but they probably won't. Of course, it ended up going on for I don't know, I feel like over a year, if not more than that even. But, for me, the personal situation was, this terribly difficult choice, because on one hand, obviously I had my older daughters on the Canadian side, and until I returned, indefinitely apart from me. And on the other hand, on the US side, where of course, significantly, I'm not a US citizen, so like even my stay there was always going to be like limited by sort of that 6-month upper limit that you're allowed to stay there before you become an illegal alien, and you might find yourself on the wrong side of a set of bars. But on the US side, basically, I had my fiance and my then, I think, maybe 3-year-old by then daughter, and basically my fiance had moved to where she was living solely to essentially facilitate us being able to have more time together, by way of her being closer to where I was living, closer to the border. And basically she had no family around. She had a friend or two, but she basically had no social support system around. And back in March, and especially with all the extra stuff that was going on in the States at the time, with the riots and all those things on top of the pandemic, things were looking and feeling just so disturbingly volatile and unsafe. And basically, I ended up staying for a couple of extra months, sort of wanting to make sure that she had me there as support, and that my youngest daughter had me there as support. My daughters, on the Canadian side, obviously had a difficult time with it, but they're amazing little girls, and they understood, and as much as they didn't like it, they basically agreed that like this was sort of the unpleasant but necessary way to handle this once in a lifetime situation. And it was literally some of the obvious things that you would have expected to go wrong in a situation like that. My ex-wife didn't take the opportunity to, like, I don't know, whatever. My daughters didn't start hating me for making that difficult decision. Basically, all the obvious bad stuff that could have gone wrong didn't go wrong, but my employer, where I had been working for more than 10 years by that time, basically made it very clear that they don't give a shit about my personal life in the slightest, and that they won't fire me yet, but they'll resume paying me once I'm back in the country, even though they were not expecting me to be in the office. Every offer and every variation I suggested that involved me sort of trying to be useful and productive and helpful, without having to abandon my, fiance and 2-3-year-old daughter, was just fundamentally of no interest to them. And eventually, I would have had to go back sooner or later, but the specific timing of when it happened was absolutely due to them, having successfully financially starved me to the point where I knew I either had to leave then, or or it was going to be, issues paying rent, a month down the road. So, it was in that context that I returned to Canada, to Toronto, in the summer of 2020, and basically the situation was such that even though I guess they honored what they promised and eventually started paying me again once I was back in the country, even the timing of that was such that at some point it was partly my fiance's stimulus package, partly I think some crypto art sales that allowed me to continue eating during that initial couple of weeks before I started getting paid properly again. That experience sort of pushed me to jump into crypto art more deeply, and it made me see it for the opportunity that it was. And I engaged much more sort of deeply and much more intentionally with the community at that point going forward. And there was in 2020, I guess already there were a lot of I think already new people were starting to trickle in, but I think it was probably towards the end of 2020, and much more so than in 2021, that you had a large influx of people who sort of weren't the traditional crypto art folks that were kind of the OGs, prior to NFTs. I mean, I guess they still haven't quite gone mainstream, but before NFTs have gone more mainstream than they have been before.
Yeah.
And
I think, maybe the $69 million sale kind of made some waves.
Yeah. People may have had something to do with it. Metakovan may have had something to do with it. Saturday Night Live may have had something to do with it. That song was kind of catchy.
Right. Yeah.
So for me in 2020, I gained an appreciation for the vision of the crypto art community, as it was back then. Again, still mostly sort of the OGs and mostly sort of that early group that I think for all the great artists in there, and for all the crypto artists that are sort of very seriously art focused. I would say what sets apart that crowd is how strong and deep the technological and philosophical focus is. And then I think the newer folks sort of late in 2020 and subsequently had less of that technological and less of that philosophical focus. A lot of them, what they did have in common with me is they saw that crypto art was a potential avenue for the possibility or the promise of maybe I can be an artist. Right. And especially in these crazy times that we're living in now, maybe I can still be an artist without having to, stuff myself into, sardine box galleries with, unmasked people, and, who the hell knows whether I'm going to be suffering from long COVID, 4 months later, and so on and so forth. But, for me, crypto art, at its best, at its greatest promise and potential and opportunity, I feel like is the synthesis of these two groups, and that's sort of, you know, how I feel. How I feel about crypto art. This is how I view it. This is sort of the vision that I tried to echo in my manifesto, and it's sort of this idea that definitely the technology and sort of that philosophy of decentralization and trustlessness and sort of changing the world through maybe it's trying to program in the meantime here, that promise of changing the world through these technologies that can replace sort of current systems, both financial and otherwise, that are fraught with corruption and special interests. And so that's an important part for me. But I think it's also very important that there are, in my mind, a set of problems and a set of social issues that are realistically addressable and God willing solvable by technological means. But at the end of the day, I don't think every problem is amenable to a purely technological solution. And once you get into some of the more human and more cultural stuff, things like racism and prejudice and opportunities and lack thereof, and sexism and misogyny and equity and all those things, and for that matter even stuff like royalties. I think they're things that suddenly can't just be solved by making some adjustments to the smart contract, and that's sort of the beginning and end of what you do, right? There are societal issues, there are cultural issues. He's upset about the state of the world, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I share his outrage. For me, crypto art, at its best is sort of a thoughtful synthesis of those two approaches, of those two philosophies, and that's that again is what I was trying to sort of give voice to in the manifesto. You remember, there were sort of discussions at the time before I ended up writing and launching the manifesto. There were discussions with a few different people, and one thing that was very apparent was that crypto art was definitely not. It was not sort of a simply definable thing where every crypto artist had the exact same idea and had the exact same sense of what were the more important parts, what were the less important parts, and I know for a fact that there are artists out there who probably would have a perspective that the technological stuff is sort of paramount, and might see those things as actually being able to deal with the social stuff as well. Whereas I've also known artists who may or may not identify as crypto artists, but sort of externally looked at certainly fit the bill, who probably have a fairly minimal focus on the technological stuff, and basically, yeah. this was sort of my attempt to show both of those groups that there is, I think, a way of bringing those two halves together without sort of badly compromising the values and the priorities and the perspectives of either of those groups. And I think together we're stronger. I think the crypto art community today is more vibrant and more diverse and more capable of sort of addressing challenges head on than it was back in 2019 when I started. And diversities of views and opinions can be sort of difficult sometimes when challenges present themselves and decisions are to be made, and there's not necessarily a single united answer that everyone rallies behind, but again, I think that's all a good thing, and it's a movement that had a huge impact on my life in no small part, thanks to you and Pablo, and the Museum of Crypto Art, and it's a very foundational part of my identity now, being a crypto artist, and it's sort of where I see my future. And yeah, as you mentioned, my collection, my activities as a collector were also sort of informed by that view. In hindsight, I guess now and then I maybe question it, whether that's always been the right decision, but over the past couple of years, I have occasionally sort of chose to let opportunities pass by to pick up stuff that sort of everyone was rallying around because I figured, okay, well, these projects or these artists clearly already have the attention they need and clearly already have the audience, and they're going to be just fine regardless of whether I pitch my tent, my horse, whether I sort of stake my fortunes on them. Yeah. That's what it is. Instead I more often try to go with artists who maybe did not always have as much of an audience or as much of an existing sort of fame or prestige attached to their name in the crypto art space, but whose work this baby is very, very adamant at trying to fall down. Yeah. So artists whose works I thought showed a great promise, and that I could see sort of down the road being significant, regardless of sort of how popularly or how prominently valued they might have been in the here and now. Right. I always look at the crypto art that sort of pops up on my feed with the eye, not so much of is this getting the 1,000 likes and the 50 retweets and whatever else, or is it selling out, or is the floor rising? But more with the mindset that like this movement we're part of, this is not going away. This is going places. This is going to rise in significance and prestige, and it's just a matter of time before people are going to be writing textbooks about the stuff that's going on here and now and today. And those writers are not necessarily going to be guided by again some of the more I don't know, lottery or kind of casino-like approaches that we sometimes take to projects.
I want to sit here and talk with you all night. There's so much obviously we share, like I think just again to give people that first chance, everybody remembers the person that was there in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The one that gave them that opportunity, the one that told them they could do it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to have the access to so many talented individuals at this stage as they begin to experiment and play with this technology. It's like a gift that keeps on giving. I find that it always comes back. I mean, look at us now, like strangers on the internet, and here we are, and we've learned so much and we've grown so much over these years and we've shared so much. And I just thank you for being who you are, for sharing all that you did. And I guess we'll end it there. Let everybody know where they can find you. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Colborn. And this has been a more chaotic conversation than I think either of us.
A proper crypto art discussion.
It's been probably a very real one. And just super quickly, this grumpy baby boy's connection to crypto art is mainly through the fact that my ability to go from having my fiance to actually us getting married in the middle of the pandemic in a safe, reasonable, and still meaningful way was very largely predicated on an early sort of larger commission, I guess maybe you would call it, from the Museum of Crypto Art, from you and Pablo, and that sort of pushed us forward and pushed the relationship forward. And I'd like to think that it was always going to go in the same direction, but I think this baby boy's timing, at least, is probably in significant part, owed a little bit to Mocha and to the Cryptoart Movement, and yeah.
Mashallah, man. It's just like it's so beautiful.
Mashallah.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Okay.
Yeah. DXM podcast. Yeah. Colborn Bell, artist DaYoum, Baby Brave. I got this one, Akuchi. We thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Breaking news.